Hey everybody, Jake here at TrendSpider to go over the weekend update into the second half of October and what a really strong move we had in the markets going into the second half of the week here. Starting with SPY, you can see here that we did get a really strong bounce off this volume shelf right around the 435 area. So you can see here that we did gap up last week, pulled back right down to the volume shelf after filling that gap, and then really moved straight up after that with two gaps below. So definitely a few gaps below to possibly fill, or it may take months to fill those gaps. We'll just have to see what the price action does moving forward. Now you can see here on the weekly side of things, we do have a nice bounce off this trend zone highlighted in green, and you can see we have quite a bit of runway to move to the upside here before really any type of resistance. The main resistance would really be the previous all-time highs right around 455, and we'll have to see if we do get that into a pretty strong seasonal time of year going into the next several months. So November, December are historically a very strong time of the year. As you can see here, looking back since 2016, November has a 100% win rate. December has an 80% win rate. But if we go back all the way since the beginning of the really strong uptrend since the financial crisis, you'll see here that November has a 92% win rate and December has a 75% win rate. So some of the strongest months ahead as far as seasonality goes, and that's kind of across the board. Same thing with the Qs. You'll see here that going into November, we have a 75% win rate. Into December, a 58% win rate. So not the strongest, but not the weakest for the Qs. So let's take off the seasonality sidebar and really look at the weekly first, and then we'll go into the daily setup here that was really a function of the Williams percent range and the RSI. So looking at the weekly chart, you can see if we anchor the VWAP from the March lows, you can see here that we also had a handoff point here in May. So that's where we're going to start another anchored VWAP. And this did hold pretty well over the last several weeks. We did move below it, but we never closed below it. So all in all, a very strong candle here on the weekly side of things. And if we make this a little bigger, looking back really since 2019, you'll see here that we do have an interesting signal that was going off using the Williams percent range and the RSI. And you'll see here that all I was really looking for was anytime that the RSI was oversold, and then pretty much anytime that the percent range was either showing divergence or an oversold level. So you can see here highlighted in the green zones, pretty much this is where the RSI was oversold. And then you can see here that we also had times where the percent range was also oversold, but the main thing was the divergence. So you can see here on the last time that we had the divergence a week and a half ago, this was the main signal. You had a higher low on the percent range. You didn't have that divergence on the RSI. So that's something that's really interesting going into the week ahead, that, you know, the RSI is not overbought yet, but the percent range is. Generally, when that's the case, you have more room to move up. We'll just have to see how that plays out. But this was a pretty strong signal for at least the short-term market bottom here. The main thing to really keep in mind as well is the fact that we did finally close above that all-time high anchored VWAP. You could see that here on the daily chart. Let me just get rid of these oscillators. You'll see this is the first time that we've closed above it in really almost a month, over a month now. So this is a pretty strong sign that this may be a reversal in the trend and possibly starting our move to all-time highs above. So let's split the screen again and look at IWM. So we'll turn on the weekly. So we'll go to IWM here. And IWM actually had a pretty rough Friday. So you can see here that we did have this symmetrical triangle rejected right above the resistance zone here. So we did gap above and then just completely melted down the rest of the day. Now, if you look at the weekly side of things, we've seen this chart before. It's only been about 8 months. We do have the COVID low anchored VWAP, or excuse me, anchored volume by price. The main thing that I want to point out here finally is we do have actually a close above the point of control. That's the first time we've had one of those since really August. So something to keep in mind that we finally did close above that point of control. We're still kind of in the shelf, so I'd probably make this more of an orange volume shelf highlighted area, because we still need to get above this volume node right around 225. So all in all, this thing continues to coil. And if you look at how this resistance and support zone are set up, this thing could literally coil for another 5-6 months. So just keep in mind that this is really just chopping up everybody right now. Anyone who's kind of trying to swing this, we haven't moved in literally 10 months. So all in all, we'll have to see how it goes, but we do have a decent bull flag on the monthly. Now, keep in mind the monthly candle is nowhere near over, but we do kind of have this setup here that's interesting to keep an eye on after testing these previous resistance levels, now acting as a support level over the last several months. And if we do close above that resistance line, that's when things could get interesting. Now, let's move into Bitcoin, some crypto that really helped us get an idea of, risk was definitely still on even when the market was moving down. So if we anchor volume by price from this low back in September, around September 20th, you'll see here that we had a nice volume shelf here. We really bounced around it for about a week and then finally launched off of it the last couple days. Now, on the weekly side of things, you'll remember that we had this huge symmetrical triangle forming, and you can see that we have continued to break out over the last couple weeks. Naturally, your next level above is going to be all-time highs, and that's right around 65K. So just keep that in mind that if we do, let's extend this over. If we do continue up into the rest of the weekend, it's actually a little higher than 65K, but all in all, you'll see that we're getting there pretty quickly, and that's definitely not a bearish sign. So all in all, the previous highs are going to be what you want to watch to see to be taken out, and from there we'll see if we can get a new all-time high printed for Bitcoin as well as Ethereum. You'll see here on Ethereum we are lagging Bitcoin a little bit. You can see here that we have not hit this previous high, but keep in mind that this is the all-time high for Ethereum, and previously when we were looking at Bitcoin a couple weeks ago, this was only like 52K. So technically, these are about the same right now. We're trying to see which one is going to hit all-time highs first. And you'll see here on the weekly chart, just a beautiful ascending triangle still forming here. And as always, you want to look at these previous highs. So this previous high around 39, and then you can see here the previous all-time high around 44 or so. So all in all, crypto is looking very strong. And really, I did this video on Friday afternoon, so you can see as the market's closed, money is definitely still flowing into crypto into the evening. So that is what crypto is looking like. But let's look at some individual names, starting with Tesla. So Tesla had a really nice move this week. You had the ascending triangle forming, and you finally got kind of a launch through that resistance zone. The February 11th high was your first level to get to, and that was hit on Thursday. Then the next one was the February 16th, 17th pivot point, which we just blasted through on Friday. So all in all, a very strong move on Tesla. And you can see here as well, we do have that ascending triangle breakout on the weekly chart as well. And then, it's kind of reminding me a little bit of crypto. All-time highs would be the next target. Now, we would need to kind of test this previous zone here. That's around 880. But if we do get through that, then watch for a retest of those all-time highs. So Tesla, one of the stronger names this week. Let's go into NIO, kind of the same industry, if you will, same sector. But if we do anchor the volume by price from the high here, you'll see we had a nice launch on Friday, today, but we moved right up to this break-even supply zone. So all of these shares that were pretty much holding at a loss got back to break-even. Some of those shares took some off some of those holders took some off the table. That added shares onto the market, and that's why this was a tough area to get through on Friday for NIO. So we'll have to see what happens going into the week ahead. But we did have the falling wedge resistance breakthrough earlier in the week. And then if you look at the weekly chart, you'll see that we do have this kind of descending triangle here. Pretty strong weekly candle here. So the main thing to keep in mind, we don't have a ton of volume yet, but that can easily come in, especially as this may start to go on a few people's radars after the strong week that NIO had. Next one is Apple. Apple's another one that had an okay week. I'd say it was compared to how the other some of the other names in the market looked. This did okay. We barely broke the Monday high on Friday, but we did move above the volume shelf here. The main thing you'd want to get through is a swing high anchored VWAP, and that is right around 145. So if we can get through 145, that would be something to keep in mind. Notice that this is the same anchored VWAP that we used on the Qs, and we're actually already through that anchored VWAP. So this one does have a little catching up to do and is actually lagging the Qs for now as far as looking at the anchored VWAP from the highs. Now on the weekly chart, you'll see here that we do have this nice trend zone, and if you haven't tried out the trend zones, all you need to do is use the channel tool here and just go on YouTube. We have a trend zone video that I went over, kind of going over how you can use these, and you'll see here that this trend zone was tested kind of right at the top of this zone the last 2 weeks, and then finally a nice close today on Friday above last week's high. So all in all, a very strong setup here going into the week ahead. Going into some semi names, NVIDIA did have a nice close above this previous resistance trend zone, and relatively strong close, not near the high, but you did have a green day with some volume backing that move. Now on the weekly side of things, you'll see that we've got this ascending wedge. We do have some room to move up. So, that zone is right around 230 to 240. So if this did move up next week, that's a solid 5% plus move that's possible for NVIDIA going into the second half of October. So all in all, definitely something to keep in mind. If you anchor the the anchored VWAP from this high here, you'll see that we did close above it. So this is kind of in the volume gap right now. You can see here that around 223, 224 would be an area where you do have some break-even supply to get through. So we'll highlight that red. And if we can get through that, that's when you definitely want to watch for possibly a test of this trend zone above that's shown on the weekly chart. Moving on to another one, AMD. A very strong week for AMD. Now, one thing that I wanted to go over here, so we've been watching this swing low anchored VWAP for quite some time, and you can see that it did do exactly what it had done in the past, which was the price bounced right at this area, and then it's had a pretty strong last week and a half. Now, I have the anchored VWAP bands here. So this band here is a 2.5% band. So we have the original anchored VWAP, but then we have another 2.5% band above it. And you can see how well price action respected that band rather than just looking at the exact VWAP, which was not tested really the last month. So you did want to use that band, which did act as support in the previous times we tested this area. Now, on the weekly side of things, you'll see that if we anchor the volume by price from the low here, we have a nice launch pad that we had play out this week. And you can see that the next area to test would be right around 114. If 114 breaks, all-time highs around 122.50 or so. And so this is a very strong candle going into the week ahead. You've got this downtrend resistance zone that broke through as well. So all in all, one of the stronger candles for this week in the semi side of things. Now going into the last one, PENN. PENN is one that we've been watching for quite some time. Had a pretty strong move over the last couple days, but you can see that it did have some trouble closing near or anywhere close to its highs. But the thing that we've been watching here is if you anchor the volume by price from the COVID lows, this volume shelf continues to hold. And the fact that we did close pretty solid compared to last week's close with that really ugly red candle, this does look decent going into the week ahead. But we'll just have to see if we can break and close above that 79 area. That would be the main area that we'd want to close above on the weekly side of things. And so we'll see if that plays out into the week ahead or coming weeks ahead. But you will see here that we did have an uptick in volume. So keep that in mind that this was a volume-backed move to the upside. And at least intraday, we did break above these previous highs here. So that's something to consider. Now, if you look at the wick here, using the raindrop chart, you'll see that we did have a red raindrop even though that we had a green close. So that's always something to keep in mind. And you can see that the volume was kind of distributed across the day's range pretty evenly. You didn't have a lot of volume aggregating in one particular area of the candle. So not a ton to go off of on the daily chart other than maybe a little bit of a bearish setup going into Monday with that red raindrop, even though we did have a green close for Friday, meaning that we closed above Thursday's close. So all in all, the weekly setup is there. The daily is a little iffy. We'll have to see how that plays out. But hopefully this video was helpful getting an idea of what the markets look like into the week ahead. Remember, if you do enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe. We try to do these every weekend, and we will see you next weekend for the next one. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to our TrendSpider DM. Those are open. If you have a question about the product, that's where you can ask, or you can reach out to hello@trendspider.com, and they are happy to answer any questions you have about the platform. We went over quite a few different features: raindrops, volume by price, anchored VWAP, seasonality. All of these things really help you get a full perspective in the market using the platform. So like and subscribe. We'll see you next weekend, and everybody have a good trading week going into the week ahead.